We'll start now. I'll initiate it. So good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this virtual session organized by the World Trade Center. This is in fact jointly organized by World Trade Centers, Bengaluru, Kochi, and Chennai. This is in fact our third episode in our series on SME branding in the new normal. The first two sessions were well received and had participation from different parts of the globe. I hope you will agree to me that branding is absolutely critical to any businesses, irrespective of its size, because of the overall impact it can make, particularly for SMEs. So that is our focus of discussion today. Now, branding is crucial because you need some kind of branding to break through the clutter, which is already created by larger enterprises through their resources. So branding, if properly done, it can definitely transform us as well as our brand. So today we are thrilled to have two eminent brand specialists joining us, Mr. Nick Crawford, the founder and CEO of Work Networks. He's joining from London. And Ms. Laura and Sutherland, the founder of Aura PR from Scotland. So welcome, Nick and Laura. And we are excited to have our moderator, Mr. Karnvir Mundrey, the founder and chief ideation officer of Atharva Marcom. Now, Karnvir is actually the man behind the show. I really appreciate, Karnvir, for your untiring support to World Trade Center for hosting this series. And let me also welcome all the participants who have joined us from your respective. We have a very mixed crowd today, so people from different background, and that is going to make the session all the more interesting. Today, the panel will be sharing some effective branding techniques, supported with some live examples and case studies. So we really look forward to it, and please feel free to share your questions, as I said, in the QA box as we progress. And let's hope that we all have some quality time listening and interacting with the panel. With that, I hand it over to Karnvir to take it forward. Over to you, Karnvir.
Thank you, Vivek, and I must say that you have given so much of support and so much of, you organized it so well. World Trade Center has organized it so well, and I must congratulate you for absolutely a seamless organization of this event. And today I have something very interesting. We've been talking about brands for a long time, and one of the ways in which we can build brands, we can build our brand to make it stronger, is to be part of a community. And today we are going to have a different side of brands, and communities are getting more and more important as time goes along. Even from every angle wherever you look, take Facebook for example. Facebook has decided in its algorithm that it's actually going to give more importance to messages that come in Facebook groups. Even WTC, what is the immense advantage for a person to be part of WTC is what? The fact that he can be part of a community, even whether he is virtual or whether he comes into the World Trade Center building, he's part of this huge community called the World Trade Center, which people don't realize. In fact, many people don't realize that World Trade Center is not a tower, because it's been overshadowed by the events of 9/11, but actually World Trade Center is a community which is all over the world, and you can take advantage of that and things that you are doing, Vivek, in India, and being a part of this whole thing. So being a part of community is really an interesting way to build your brand among the right people in a low cost way. And to discuss that, I have two very interesting angles, one from a PR angle and one from a technology angle. So Laura is going to be talking about her experience of guiding SMEs in her part of the world from a PR angle, and Nick is going to be talking about it from a technology angle. And a secret sauce, or a secret that wasn't revealed till now, is that Nick actually has something for the World Trade Center as well. So he is going to tell you something which could connect people internally in the World Trade Center, and he's done something very well with WHO and other organizations. So I'm going to start with a formal introduction of Laura and Nick. So this is what Laura gave me as her bio. It was a very simple bio. Laura Sutherland is a chartered PR consultant and founder of firm Aura PR in 2008. She is the former board director of the CIPR and is currently the chair of PRCA in Scotland and a member of its UK council. Laura is a PR industry ambassador and founded the global community and festival PRFest in 2016. All very nice, but the problem is Laura doesn't do her own PR very well. The fact is that she has won almost every award that you could think of, and repeatedly, so every year, they try to find somebody else to give an award to, and they fail, so they give it to Laura again. So Laura has, she's won PR Consultant of the Year 2018, and then she won PR Consultant of the Year 2019, and I don't know if there's a PR Consultant of the Year award in 2020. Otherwise, Laura would have won that as well. There's not been an award. So I've been proven right. So Laura is, has been defining PR in her part of the world. So listen to her carefully because she really knows what she's talking about. Nick is a technology guru and somebody who is really, really, amazing in technology. And let me tell you, I have been using, I'm a PR person, I'm a tech person, I've been using Facebook since 2006, and Nick could tell me something about Facebook which I didn't know. So Nick is actually the founder and CEO of a company called Work Networks, which is the UK's first, there's a workplace from Facebook software. And he's a development partner for this workplace from Facebook technology. And he has successfully deployed it around the world. Many years ago, I was part of a movement called knowledge management, in which knowledge within the organization should be carefully kept, and when a person leaves, it should be managed and so on. Well, basically, and Nick might prove me wrong or support me in this, but workplace from Facebook is like a knowledge management on steroids. So basically, they have taken that and basically pumped a lot of vitamins, minerals, and immunizations into it, and created something called Workplace from Facebook, which works really well. So with that, and he has a very long bio, which is he's the founder and CEO of Work Networks, which is one of UK's first workplace from Facebook development partners. And he and his team has led over 35 successful implementations of Workplace. Some of them are extremely interesting right now and controversial, like the World Health Organization. I hope that the information that is passing through his network gets us the desired results with a vaccine. But over his years, he's won a number of awards from Employment Engagement Awards and the Institute of Internal Communications. So with that, we're going to have a very interesting session about how do you create brands, how do you build networks, how do you create communities. And with that, I give it first to Laura to give us an introduction of her perspective of SMEs, and where do you think that SMEs are going, and her perspective on the subject.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this event, and congratulations on such a well-organised event and for so many people turning up. I hope that you'll find the session interesting and that my Scottish accent won't be too much of a challenge. So SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises in the UK tend to be classed as up to £10 million businesses. And in Scotland in particular, we have a thriving SME community. But right now, we're obviously in a very different time. We, like everyone else in the world, are battling with business, and we're trying to bounce back from being locked down due to the global pandemic. And figures released today, just to give you perspective, in Scotland, there are 76,000 loans equal to £2.1 billion from the government's bounce back scheme for Scottish SMEs alone. There's also 3,300 loans valued at £758 million. And there are also a further 126,000 self-employed loans which have gone out to the self-employed. So that probably gives you a bit of a perspective as to the current economic situation in Scotland within small businesses. Many staff are still on furlough until the end of this month, which is basically the government which has given money to businesses to help support and to retain staff, whilst a lot of businesses have been put on stop or have gone down to part-time reduced working as a result of the pandemic. So whilst Scotland is known for producing some great brands, is known for inventing and is known for gaming as well, Scotland also has its challenges, and you know, I won't shy away from that. Business Gateway recently did a research survey. Now, Business Gateway is an enterprise company which supports smaller businesses and provides them with solutions and support across everything from finance and taxes to employment and skills training. And Business Gateway did a survey which said that 78% of the people that they had surveyed said they were concerned about the impact of the global pandemic. But a further 52%, so some of those 78% and other people, 52% said that they actually anticipate positive change as a result. And this will fit in with some of what I'm going to be talking about in a wee while. So there are, whilst there are challenges, there are still opportunities. And I think that's what some of our businesses are looking at. And in particular, you know, we're working from home, we're working remotely, we're having to manage teams. One of the biggest things that our businesses is considering is culture and leadership, and how that fits in with what's happening right now and what's happening with the future. And that's not just a public relations aspect, that's a full business concern, and something that businesses have to really be focused on all the time. And that's by potentially reimagining entire businesses, not adapting or pivoting, but actually reimagining entire businesses which are based on facts, based on data, based on new trends, because nothing has stayed the same. People have changed, people's buying habits have changed, people's likes, dislikes have changed, people are worried about certain things that they weren't worried about before. Everything has changed due to the pandemic. So one of the things that I'm working on with businesses and SMEs in Scotland and across the UK and Europe is actually working to reimagine businesses from the ground right up again. So breaking it down and then building it back up. And that's coming back again to based on the leadership, based on culture, and based on data. There's a big emphasis being put on agile working just now as well. So being agile means that you will be resilient in the future. There'll be business resilience plans in place. It will mean that you're able to adapt to circumstances as they change, because let's be honest, this might be here for a while. We might be going up and down with lockdowns and with reopening and with relaunching and partial lockdowns. So we have to be very agile in the way that we work with our stakeholders, with our teams, and everybody else involved. And none of this includes Brexit. Because Brexit, where the United Kingdom has left the European Union, we still don't have a deal, and we still don't know what that looks like. And the impact on the wider United Kingdom will be different in Scotland, because Scotland is a country in its own right, in a nation in its own right. And you may have heard in the past that Scotland tried to become an independent country and have an completely independent government and money system compared to the rest of England and Wales. And obviously a part of Ireland has already done that. So there are big implications coming for Scotland, for businesses who are rooted here. There are massive opportunities for businesses who are rooted here and who are, centred here and are taking advantage of all the skills and the development that Scotland has to offer. But yeah, there are massive challenges, but equally there are also big opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Laura, for that overview. There are a lot of questions which I think everybody has about SMEs and how they're surviving, and you talked about building them back from ground up with different needs and different goals. But I would like to take them in a while to start with. Have Nick give his perspective on SMEs and from a technology perspective, because he is the technology man, and how SMEs could better utilize technology to take them forward into this unknown next few years.
Thank you, Karnvir. Thanks, Laura. Hello, everybody. And just to echo what Laura said, it's a real honor and a pleasure to be talking to you all today from sunny South London. Yeah, I mean, the perspective on SMEs, I think just to kick off, SMEs are the lifeblood of all of our economies, and I'm biased because I created my own SME. But essentially, I think that the way I look at businesses of whatever size, right, is that they are essentially communities, networks of people. And I think strong businesses are businesses that have strong connections between their people of whatever size. And we'll look at some examples of what I mean in a moment. SMEs, in the context that Laura's just set out, we have a real advantage, right? Because it's easier to create those connections, for information to flow, to be agile. It's easier to do that in SMEs than perhaps in much larger organizations. And so we can look in a minute about how we can perhaps harness that advantage. But just to sort of link this back in with branding, yes, it's nice to call me the technology guy, Karnvir, but at the end of the day, for me, it's all about people, right? And the technology is all about enabling people to do things. So really that is at the heart of this. And, businesses of all sizes, people are at the heart of it. It's an obvious thing to say. We talk about culture, we talk about branding, we talk about values. Ultimately, it's about people and behaviors and things like that. And I think the point that I feel very strongly, if we're looking at SME branding, is that in today's age, we need to, rather than just sort of coming up with, a brand manager just coming up with some values and sort of forcing them in a paternalistic way upon some employees. These days we need to, and indeed we are able to, involve all of the people inside an organization in determining that vision, that mission, those values, and that brand in such a way as well that can shape, as Laura was saying, in this ever-changing world. And so I think what I'd like to sort of show you some examples of today and some techniques around is how we can put people at the heart of this whole branding thing. We can give everybody a voice inside the organization, from the front line to the head office, whatever size, whatever sector. And we can involve people in shaping that brand. And the final obvious point is that this is challenging at the moment because, of course, many of us like me are working. I'm very lucky. I have a home office, but I'm still at home, right? So my colleagues aren't here in the room with me. So how do we, involve all of our people in shaping this brand and this strong brand? How do we do that? And I guess that's where the technology is going to come in, but also, essentially the brand, from my perspective, the brand starts from inside. And once you get that shaped, you can then work with experts like Laura to then really externalize that. That's where I'm looking at it from.
Oh, that's brilliant. And it's very interesting that you mentioned all that, because I was just reading a little anecdote. A new person joined the organization in the marketing department, and he asked the person who was interviewing him that, do I report to the vice president of marketing? He said, no, you report to Twitter. So the designation, the reporting has changed from reporting to, as you mentioned, from the vice president of marketing to actually everybody has a brand, everybody has a voice, and everybody has to report, has to have a clear voice, to the people. We are going to go into now the case studies. Laura is going to talk about her experiences, and then Nick, you will. But before that, there are one or two questions, and I like to take them right when they are, because sometimes we miss some of, and we run out of time. So the first question came from Jerin Verghese, who, Laura, I think you would be up to answering this, which says, how can we ensure responsibility in online branding and also prevent fake reviews and attempts to defame brands? I think this is very important from the SMEs have a big concern about this, because I think they're a bit not so strong in terms of their legal department and ability to fight back the big bad boys of Google and Facebook and everybody else. So how do you manage fake reviews and attempts to defame brands? Before you answer that, there's a quote which we use in India. I don't know, maybe it's all over the world. How do you hide bad news? No, it says, how do you hide a dead body? And the answer is on page 2 of Google. So that's what they say. So one of the ways of hiding fake news is, in my opinion, is to give so much of positive news that the fake news just gets hidden. But Laura, your views.
Okay. So branding, or let's call it a brand, because branding could be more of a sort of physical design, rather than an actual brand. So at the heart of a brand, as Nick was talking about, there are people. So there's a lifeblood, there's a heartbeat, there are people with emotions and feelings. But equally, outside of that brand, the consumer will also have emotions, and they will also have feelings, and they'll have feelings towards that brand and how that brand's treated them, and that sort of relationship that they have. And the relationship is the thing that you need to keep on the right foot, and you need to keep positive, and you need to address when there are challenges. Now, I work a lot in crisis communication, and rule 1 of crisis is that you don't run away from it. You stand up and you say sorry if you have made a mistake. You stand up and you basically say what you're going to do to fix it, and you then follow that through. So you say it and then you do it, and that's good leadership, but it's also what everyone should be doing. But if you have fake reviews, then that's actually a consumer problem in general. There are bots that are sent out to do it on platforms. There are people that will do it because they are jealous, or they have a problem with a brand, and they would rather just spam different platforms, whether it's TripAdvisor or Facebook or whatever. And these platforms have to take the responsibility on when someone complains or reports this as a fake review. And it's really important, because some brands will report things that they feel are bad against their company, but actually are potentially true. And that's just something they're going to have to address. But if it's something that's completely fake and completely unrelated, maybe it's actually for a brand with a similar name and it's by accident, then it's up to people to report that and to go through the proper procedures. Attempts to defame brands, that's something that's very, very current right now. So defamation laws are basically being tightened up, and there's discussions being held as to the power of the courts against people's personal reputations when they're tied up with other brands if there's defamation. But as with anything, and this is where I would caution everybody, you have to have evidence. So if someone is coming to you and saying you've done something wrong, then there must be evidence. In a crisis situation, the first thing I'm going to go and do if somebody says there's a fire is I'm going to go and check that there's a fire, and then there has to be a period of evidence collecting. And for defamation, it works in a very similar way. So it's like a timeline, a paper trail, all that type of stuff. But these things are going to become more common in the world of social, and in a world where it's easier to write a fake review than basically going and addressing what the problem is. if they have a problem with the brand. And it is a live problem we're going to have, and it can't be resolved immediately. But it's with your proper communication channels and doing things ethically that will get you through to reporting and having a sound conclusion.
Absolutely. In fact, one or two things which I would like to add to this is, number one, have a crisis communication plan in the first place. A lot of companies don't have a crisis communication plan. If they have a fire, if they have some problem in the company, if people quit, if there's bad news, who is going to answer that? Who is the person responsible for it? Who is going to address it? How is it going to be answered? Where is the data going to come from? Who is the press people that they're going to connect with? Just like a doctor's list on the door, there needs to be a crisis communication plan. And I think that to start with is something which I would really urge almost all companies, especially Indian companies. Second question.
Just before you have before you have a crisis communication plan, I would urge you to have a risk register, and the risk register will include everything from operational to processes to people, and should be on a scale of what's going to be likely to unlikely, and if it happens, what are the consequences for the brand, and then that goes into the crisis communication plan. So you have a completely informed 360-degree view as well of the business.
Great. Great. All of you listening, you need to have a risk register to start with. Risk register leads into a crisis communication plan, and then crisis communication plan leads into active action that you need to take. Going into the second question is something which Nick it would be up Nick's sleeve, is how can SMEs leverage gig and platform economy to the maximum, especially in the information technology sector. They want to know about how can we leverage. I think you are in a way leveraging the gig economy quite well, even within your SME, and give us your experience about, can SMEs leverage this gig economy? Is it a long-term strategy? How can it be leveraged to the maximum in your perspective? And also, you are managing this Microsoft, this Facebook tool. Does that also lead to being able to leverage the gig and platform economy?
So yes, sorry, that question is to me. Great question. So, the gig economy. My business itself, right, is my company's called Work Networks. We are essentially a network. So I have there's a core team, growing team who I work with. But essentially, we are able to grow and work in an agile fashion because we bring in the right sort of freelancers or developers or bot developers or whoever it might be in a very flexible kind of way, which increasingly is very attractive on both sides, right? So I guess my business, and indeed the technology we work with from Facebook, is at the heart of being able to sort of leverage that flexibility of the sort of gig economy, if that makes sense. Does that? That's a bit of a short answer, but maybe in a moment I can show you perhaps some of the real examples of how we are.
Yeah, I think we'll wait for that for you to show us that. Meanwhile, back to you, Laura, to tell us some real world, your experiences about handling SMEs, how you help them build a brand, and your experiences to do that. Over to you.
I tried to pick 3 quite different types of clients. So I've left out all the big ones and focusing on small ones, just to try and be more practical in my approach. I'm all about being practical. So the first one is a client called the West End Festival in Glasgow. And they're a festival which runs across an entire month, and it has over 400 events in over 80 venues. And it's all about arts and culture and bringing communities together. I've worked with them for over 10 years, so they're my longest serving client. And we have 2 events a year that we do. So we have the summer event in June, and we have the St Andrew's Day Torchlight Parade in November, at the end of November. And the thing with the West End Festival is that we have to think on the small scale of people that live in the community that makes up the surrounding areas, and people are going to come to their events and enjoy. So what we do is, and with all my clients, I do audience profiling. Audience profiling means that I get to know those audiences. I get to know what they like, what they don't like, what platforms they use, if they prefer to have email or use social media. And then I start to work out what it is that we have of value to them as an audience that I can then start to talk to them about and start building a relationship, start having that two-way conversation. And by using that just the very simple technique, you can always keep things relevant, and you can always be at their level speaking to them about what they care about. And that's really, really important when you're trying to engage people. And because they only have 2 events across the year, we have to think of ways to engage with them across the entire year and not just at 2 separate points. So by using email marketing and by using social media, we work with other organizations in the same location to share information in the local area that will be relevant to them. So whether it's more events that are taking place or new restaurants that are opening that we can welcome and say congratulations, offers that some people approach us with, so for partnerships. And then we collaborate with partners to offer discounts around our events, so that we are basically adding value to what we're trying to do. And that really works, because then that gives us content. And content marketing is a huge part of what we do, because what we're doing is we're telling a story through the content that we're creating. And that's of value to the consumer, because we've done our research, we've done our profiling, and we've started to have that conversation. And where it gets really interesting is when we start to look at the data behind the different platforms that we have. So Google Analytics, Facebook, Twitter, and we start to look at how people are using the platforms and when they're using them and how they're engaging with us, so we can see what they like and what we can do more of. So do they like videos more than they like pictures? How long are the videos? How can we then start to enhance and integrate when we're sending an email out, and how that person's interacting with the email to press book now? Because we always want an action. So it's not just about having press coverage, because press coverage is great for awareness, but what are we actually going to do to measure? We need someone to take action. So by having an integrated approach for news, for content, for social media, all that type of stuff, we're asking people to do something at the end of it. And that's really important, because we can measure that. And one thing I would say to you is that there's no point in doing something if you can't measure it. So it's not about reach, it's not about just the clicks, it's about what they do at the end and the impact on your bottom line and the impact on behavior change. So whatever you've set out to do strategically as an organization, it has to relate right back to that as a business. The second client is a tourism business.
Well, I wanted to bring one thing in perspective before you go to the second client.
Sure.
I wanted everyone to know who's hearing this that 2 events in the year, and you need to do all that work for them. So, it doesn't matter. It's not about, that we have regular events. A lot of SMEs think that, we just have, we just want to give this press release out, or, just put up a post on Facebook, and, how does it matter? And, we just want to put up some posts on Instagram or Facebook, and then they wonder why they're not getting any results. And this is why Laura is the PR consultant of the year again and again, because this is the amount of work that goes on into getting successful, the kind of analytics that you need, the kind of analysis that you need. For instance, when we do YouTube, and this is from I'm sure Laura does it as well, you actually have to see after how many minutes are people stopping to watch the video, and then you go back and analyze the content at 3 minutes and 30 seconds and figure out what is turning off people at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and then you keep improving it. You make it 345 seconds, 350 seconds, 4 minutes, and that's a win in itself. So all the SMEs who are listening, it is not just taking a picture, putting it up. It's a lot of back-end research, a lot of profiling, a lot of analysis, which goes on into creating great PR. Laura, sorry to interrupt.
No, I would echo the preparation is possibly one of the longest parts of it before you start moving and doing stuff. But the preparation of your research and your planning is how that is going to make things work. If you've not done preparation and you've not looked at your data and you've not got a data-led strategy, then you're not going to be able to go away and start to execute it and get measurable results, which is what it's all about. So the next client is a small tourism client. They are based in Edinburgh, which you've probably heard of. And they do city tours, they do haunted tours, they do ghost tours. It's all about history and about telling stories. And when the pandemic hit, they had to stop everything. All their staff went on furlough. And they brought me on board in July to help them develop a strategy that would get them ready to relaunch out of lockdown. And what that consisted of was, well, obviously we had to keep an eye on the government guidelines as to what was happening. So if you work in an industry where there are changes that are affecting what's happening in your specific sector, you have to be on top of what the government's saying, whether it be oil and gas or whether it be internal communication, whether it be training and development or legal and accountancy. There's always going to be things that affect your business. So we started off with the basics, and that was coming right back down to what the business actually meant. What was its purpose? What was it doing? Who was it serving? When did it start? And it started 35 years ago by my client's father, who was still an active part of the business. So there we had a link with a family business we were talking about. The next part was we had history with 35 years of experience of telling stories, of visitors and all the rest of it. So we had human capital. Human capital is like gold dust. It's where you get all your endorsements from. It's where you get people to spread word of mouth. It's all this beautiful goodwill that you've built up with your customers, and that people are ready to help you as well. You have to think of it that way. So then after we started looking at the business and broke it all down into its sections, we said, well, what do we want to do? What are we allowed to do? Well, we want to come back out and we want to keep telling stories. But there was restrictions in place around technology, personal distancing. So once we got the sort of physical things out the way, operationally, we started to look at new technology. And one thing that we started to use was a thing called Tour Talk, which meant that when there was a guide taking people around the city, they could stand 5, 10, 15, 20 meters away from them, and they could still hear each other because they had earphones in and a radio system to tell the story. So they were managing this situation really well. It's one of the first times it's been used in Scotland.
What is this technology again? Tour Talk?
Tour Talk. I'll put it in the comments.
Yeah, please.
And it's brilliant. And international trade press are talking about it, and it's a good thing. But then we started to look at our partnerships, because we thought, well, we need, if it's tourism, we need our big partners like Visit Scotland and Visit Britain to be talking about what we're doing. So we then started to craft the narrative and the story around coming out of lockdown, being ready, being safe, having done all this research around what we were allowed to do and what we weren't allowed to do, adopting new technology. All of these stories are big points in this business's relaunch out of lockdown, which A, told a story about the business, B, gave people a level of comfort that when they were coming back on tours, they were safe. They could do it at a distance. They could still hear clearly, and that there was still fun to be had in an experience. And now, right now, because as I said, a lot of Scotland's still in a bit of a lockdown, there's not much for us to do. But because these tours are still on and they're safe distances and you can still hear people and it's a bit of fun with your household, some people take their kids, for example, and their families, there's still something for them to do. And so that's more endorsements, it's more 5-star reviews coming through. And it's more content for Visit Scotland, Visit Britain, for us and for everyone to talk about the positive impacts. And it's been brilliant, and the client is absolutely over the moon. So much so that we're just about to trial our first virtual tour in Australia.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Don't ask me how that's going to happen. I've still to figure that bit out.
I think that's a lot of learning. I think considering the amount that India has been hit by the pandemic, something like Tour Talk and this entire case study which you talked about makes huge learning for India actually. And I would like to. I don't know if it's possible in some way, but if we could record this and put it out somewhere for the Indian tourism industry, I think it would really be very good. Before your third one, if you allow me, I'd like to switch over to Nick, and so that he could give up his perspective. I don't want to have him having to rush. Nick, tell us about what you do and all the interesting technology that you're using.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief. I'm just going to share my screen, I think, just to tell you a couple of stories. And it's a bit of a chicken and an egg here. Do I show you the technology and then show you the case studies? What I might do is just show you some high-level, very quick case studies, both of large, medium, and small organizations. And then at the right moment, I can then go into the detail, if you want, about the technology. And indeed, I can share some very practical plans about how you can access it, costs, implementation plans, all that kind of stuff, if you want all of that. So what I'll do very quickly is I'll share my screen.
Let's do the benefits, because that really gets people to understand, and then you can also show the technology, of course.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I mean okay, well let me just start with this one then.
Yeah, as you have planned.
Yeah, just literally just a couple of very quick case studies. So I'm just bringing this back to this concept of developing the brand is starting by giving everyone a voice, connecting everyone inside the organization, irrespective of the size, the industry, the market, where you are in the world, or whatever you do. And so, these are some logos, but these are some examples. I'm not going to go through all of them, but up here we've got, I don't know, Sailors Society at the bottom there. They're a small charity with like 95 employees, not particularly big. AstraZeneca have 95,000, I think. I can't keep up, whatever. This enormous global pharmaceutical company. The point is that the kind of stuff that we can show you here, the basic principles apply whether you are an SME, a massive global organization. So I'm just going to pick on some of these. And I know, I was just going to say, so basically the workplace thing, we've been working very closely with Facebook on this kind of, collaboration using Facebook sort of journey since, I don't know, 2014, 2015. The story very quickly here is that Facebook themselves used Facebook, consumer Facebook, internally as a kind of internal comms platform initially, and then realized the power of it for connecting people inside the organization, right? So originally they did that using closed Facebook groups and secret Facebook groups. And in around 2015, they created their own separate instance of Facebook. And it was called Facebook at Work. It was the sort of beta product around 2015. So since then, we've been involved, as you said earlier, Karnvir, in rolling out this thing that's now called Workplace from Facebook around the world. And here's an organization that everybody has heard of. I know it's not an SME. But we were able to roll this out last summer, not knowing there was a global pandemic around the corner. So it was a little bit kind of lucky timing, to put it mildly. But the point I want to make here is, so this is a single internal Facebook, in inverted commas, just accessible inside the World Health Organization, both to employees and certain selected partners. So it's a secure internal platform. And whether that's for Dr. Tedros, who we now all know, can do a post out to the globe, or the regions, they have 6 regions, or at a country level, people can connect and share information incredibly efficiently inside the organization, right? So that might be for coordinating emergency operations on the ground in Yemen, for example. Or you probably can't see that third picture from the left, was where every employee around the WHO was able to sign up to their new values charter, right? So bringing this back to brand, the first new values charter came out last year across the whole WHO, brand values, and that was a co-creation with employees, people who work for the WHO around the world were able to sign up and co-create what those values are, and then through Workplace, there were live feeds, live broadcasts coming around of people signing, literally physically signing up to those charters and things on this secure internal platform. So there's loads of stories to tell around here, but here's an example of a smaller organization, the lovely English National Opera who we work with, based here in the UK. And I think, what are they, 400 people or something like that? So obviously considerably smaller. They had a really difficult journey this year. Fortunately, we launched this Workplace community platform prior to COVID. And of course, as you can imagine, when COVID kicked in, they had to close the door of the Colosseum in London, which is obviously pretty horrific news for an opera company. But by having this community platform, their chief executive in the bottom right there has been able to connect directly with the props department, the orchestra, the choir, the singers, and essentially have different groups and things set up to continue the conversation, to make plans for what they're going to do when they open their doors. They were able to come up with a drive-in opera at the Alexandra Palace in London. And from a sort of branding perspective, both sort of top right, there's a picture of some Lego characters. They discovered through this community that the people in the props department could make these incredible Lego models, right, of operas. And that's gone out and created loads of coverage on their Instagram feed, which subsequently has led to charitable donations coming into the organization. The picture in the middle there, they've been, their costume department, hasn't been able to do operas. So they've been turning their hand to making personal protective equipment and things. Anyway, the point is that Workplace has given them a secure internal community platform to connect and share and keep the organization essentially alive as they build and prepare for what's going to happen when eventually they're allowed to open their doors again. I think they are slowly but surely allowed to let people back into the organization. Just very quickly, a third story here. It's an ambulance service, right? So it's part of the National Health Service here in the UK. But again, similarly, we've launched this platform internally. The lady in the middle there, Helen Ray, she's incredible, and she's very active in terms of leading the community. She launched it and invited all her colleagues on board, whether they are ambulance workers, whoever they are, right? So we now have this platform internally, and you can see on the right here, they've created a group for like the history and the culture and the memories, where people can post, photos and things. And so for the first time ever, whether you're a mobile employee, whether you're office-based, whether you're on a call center, everybody can feel part of one organization. And I guess, hopefully this is giving you an idea how this can all link back to involving everybody in the development of the brand. I don't know if that makes any kind of sense. Karnvir, we've lost you, perhaps.
No, I'm there. I'm just trying to switch on my video because no, great. I mean, I think that's something which is pretty new, and a lot of people, a lot of SMEs around the world are probably unaware of the fact that they could use this technology to leverage it. So tell us a little bit more, Nick, about how do you implement this technology? What does it take? And if an SME wants to do it, how does it exactly work?
Perfect, and I'll whiz through this because obviously we'll bring Laura back into the conversation. I know we're coming at things from two quite different sort of angles, but I'm just going to share my screen again and give you guys some practical information on that. Oops, hang on a second. So just very quickly, so this thing I was talking about, it's called Workplace from Facebook, right? I'll show you how to get it in a moment. There is a free version that you guys can go and have an experiment with. Basically, think of it as like setting up your own secure Facebook inside your organization, but it's more than that. it's kind of Facebook with a suit on. We were talking about people don't wear suits anymore, Karnvir, but you know what I mean. It's like it's a work version of Facebook, okay? And so it's, you know, the advantage is that it's familiar, it's easy to use. You know, people who are used to using Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp can enjoy those kind of features and that kind of experience, but within your organization. And suddenly overnight, you can just get everybody connected as a secure internal community. So essentially, it's got a suite of tools. It's got, you know, workplace chat, which is kind of a bit like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, but inside your organization. You can do video chat. You can create groups, whether that's for sharing internal news, aligning people behind the new brand direction. You know, perhaps, you know, once you've got your crisis comms plan, you might need to share that with specific people and mobilize them behind that at light speed. And you've got a news feed, of course, which is then bringing together all of that content inside your organization. And you've got things like org chart, right, which may or may not be relevant depending on the size of your organization, and that's all dynamic and driven from the kind of data.
And this is totally secure from the outside world. The outside world.
Precisely. So, and I'll show you in a second. But basically, the organization, you create the accounts, you provision accounts, whether that's with for the techie people out there, you know, with a synchronization with your people directory of some kind, or whether you just essentially manually create accounts for, if you have 100 employees, you create 100 employees accounts, and only they can access that. And I'll pick up on that again in a second. But you are the data owner and the data controller, right? Let's be absolutely, you know, people think Facebook, you know, the data is monetized for advertising and marketing and all of that. Workplace is an internal platform. And I'll come on to the pricing, I think. I'll just whiz you through this. But essentially, the idea is then you've got obviously a very strong mobile experience, and you can get this through the web. I'm not going to dwell on that too much. But a bit like Facebook and Messenger, you've got Workplace and Workplace Chat. Critically, and I won't spend too much time with this, you can create groups inside it. So instead of just having like one Facebook group, you have multiple groups, and you can either make all your employees a member of those, or those be groups for teams and projects, open discussions around values, culture, whatever it might be. You can even have multi-company groups to collaborate with partner agencies. We talked about the gig economy. You know, you can have ways here where you can connect with people outside the organization and just give them partial access whilst keeping your inner business kind of secure. And of course, you can also have groups around social things and movies and photography and all that other stuff that builds everyone's network inside the organization, which is so important, particularly when we're all stuck at home. You know, it's not all just one long kind of Zoom meeting. You can connect in a more sort of asynchronous fashion with colleagues across your organization. There's also a thing in there called Knowledge Library. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but there is a way of, you can have nice filing structure for all of your kind of brand values and your guidelines and whatever it might be, your policies and things. And so you have like profiles, just like on Facebook, right? And it's, you can do workplace live videos. So you could, in a crisis situation, you could have an employee who could somehow just very quickly grab their phone and start broadcasting live and go live to the entire organization securely internally, right?
Just to, since, I think people will love to know more about it, and your contacts will be probably shared with people for those who want to know. But Laura, tell us about, what do you think technology, what has your experience been about SMEs and usage of technology, and what are the challenges that you face when companies come to you and they want to do something? Do they understand PR? How do you guide them to a successful plan?
So I think the first thing is, from a technology perspective, we would use technology to answer a problem. So for example, what Nick was showing there is one example of a social enterprise platform. We would use social enterprise platforms predominantly for internal communication purposes. So one example is I am a volunteer for the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, and developed a volunteer engagement strategy. The problem we were trying to solve was that there were people across the world, 350 people, that couldn't communicate with each other. There was no way of building knowledge, sharing contact details, sharing event ideas, having discussions. So I developed a social networking or social enterprise platform for that. But the advantage of that was also that when people stopped serving as their term as a volunteer, they would also be retained on that platform. So you're retaining their, social capital, social knowledge, and all that type of stuff, which is really important. From a sort of an SME perspective, one of the biggest things I worked on for a business of a small size was the world's first leather thermal energy plant. And the problem that we were trying to solve was the aim was to be the lowest carbon leather manufacturer in the world, and B, to be that lowest carbon leather, you had to have certain credentials, and the only solution was to build a thermal energy plant where it was a closed loop system, and they could sell the additional electricity, etc., that it generated, and the outputs of the thermal plant, which was like coal almost it was making. They could sell that to construction industry. So there were complete benefits to technology, but also further benefits to society, I suppose, at the same time as well. So that was the 3 Ps I like to say: people, planet, and purpose. So kind of thinking about all that, and it was solving a problem at the same time. So technology doesn't have to just be something online like digital. Technology can be science-based, or technology can be so many different things.
But that's amazing. In fact, I like the way you go so deep in the technology to understand and create kind of a PR plan. But do you ever have seen challenges in your career as to SMEs not realizing the kind of PR that they need to do, and probably coming in? Sorry?
All the time. Yeah. So I think people have a sort of preconceived idea as to what PR is. And they'll come and say, can you do my PR? And I'll say, okay, can we get back to your business objectives? And they'll wonder why I'm asking what the business objectives are. And that's because before you put pen to paper, you have to be gearing towards something that's going to benefit that business, add value to it. And that's when we talked about the research earlier on. You would have then the research process, you would then do the planning process, and then you would start to flesh out all the activity, so the tactical stuff. And you would never do tactics before strategy. And that's where businesses sometimes think, oh, why are we wasting all of our time on this front end planning? But that's the most important part. And that's where the evaluation starts as well, because you have to seed at the start how you're going to evaluate what you're doing. So before you do any of the other stuff, you have to think about that and say, well, what is it? What does success look like? How are we going to say what is successful? And establishing that right at the beginning, and the mechanisms for it is so important. Number one.
And yes,
sorry.
Nick.
No, I just wanted to jump in on Laura's first point, which is excellent, and just to establish that what I'm not suggesting here is just starting with the sort of technology, right? The common thread we're seeing across every SME, every organization in the world at the moment is, yes, to say there's a sort of need for internal communications, but there is a need for having a central platform, particularly when we can't have a building we can all go into anymore, particularly when we're in different locations. So you've got to have there's a fundamental need for a critical mass of adoption on a single platform. And that platform has to have basic fundamental tools and things within it, such as the ability to connect and share and talk and do video and do, you know what I mean? So the last thing I would ever want to do is suggest just sort of starting with some sort of tactical, and it goes well beyond what might be called the sort of enterprise social, like that's a term that sort of Yammer coined, I think, before they got acquired by Microsoft. But so I just wanted to make it clear that, yeah, I fundamentally believe that in the future, there are going to be connected organizations and organizations who aren't connected. You've got to have 80-90% plus adoption of some sort of single platform that's going to become a virtual representation of what might have been a building in the old world. And that's all we're trying to do. And at the moment, the reason I'm working with Facebook on it is it seems to be the most powerful way of doing that. I'd work with anyone who could do better. But I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry, I don't know if...
No, absolutely. Those are excellent points. I just want to come to one last point because I think we're running out of time. But the one thing which SMEs are concerned about is cost, and more so in this time and in this, because business is slow and everybody's trying to conserve their cash flow. So I'd like 2-3-minute answers from both Laura and Nick as to what is your perspective on should you spend, how much you should spend, what should one's budgets be? Because I personally feel that you shouldn't stop. You need to keep communicating, but that would be coming from me. But I would like both your perspectives on somebody who's concerned about cash flow and things are slow. Should you conserve or pause PR, or what is the strategy in such a situation?
Did you want to go first?
Laura?
Okay. So you're 100% right. You shouldn't stop. Stopping communicating is almost like saying you're stopping your business. Stopping communicating sends potentially negative signals. Communication is the one thing that we have as human beings that will keep us connected, keep us positive, keep us on the same page, talking the same language. You don't want people to misconstrue what is not being said. So I think, yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of cost, you have to see this as an investment. It's an investment of money, it's an investment in time, it's an investment in people, it's an investment in brain power as well. And it's actually a fundamental part of your business. I mean, I work with very small businesses, from one-person businesses up to multi-billion-dollar nuclear waste companies. That's the extent of what I work with, and not one of them has stopped working with me because of funds. And that's because I represent value. As long as I can continue to represent value to them, which adds to their bottom line, which represents leads, which represents whatever we're trying to aim for, changing behavior, changing perceptions, managing situations, coming up with the ideas to help relaunch. If I present value, then absolutely they're going to keep on doing it. What I would say is that where people don't necessarily have a good experience with PR practitioners is where they maybe stop believing in it. But if you have a chartered practitioner, an accredited practitioner even, someone that's committed to their own development and someone that can demonstrate everything I've talked about, from strategy to research to data to measurement and evaluation, and can demonstrate to you before they even work with you how that's going to work, then that's who you should be working with, because it's absolute investment. And that investment will pay off, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in 2 months, maybe in a year's time, but maybe in 5 years' time, you will be 400 times the size you are. You'll have better culture within your organization, you will have better, more effective communication, and you will have 5 stars rather than those fake ones that are coming through. So it's a combination of business, communication, people, purpose, and investment, and making sure it's consistent, I would say, as well.
Wow. Nick?
I love PR.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd just like to say, and I'll give you a couple of practical tips in a second. And I think I agree with everything Laura said, right? And everything's about value. As long as you're getting value back, then something's worth it. It's a no-brainer, right? I mean, I think, but I feel for everyone at the moment who is struggling through difficult times, and I think to an extent there's an element of sort of batten down the hatches, so whilst yes, keep on those suppliers who are giving you value, like Laura, absolutely, but also harness your internal resources. And so again, that brings me back naturally to the fact that if you can connect everyone internally, and let me just show you how you can do that for free today, right? And I'm not trying to sort of sell you anything here, so you can just do this yourself. Just very quickly show you what I'm talking about. So you can go on to workplace.com, right, which is Facebook's platform there, and you'll see that there are different versions of this technology I was talking about, and I'd strongly recommend that. You can then sign up for the free essential version, which can give you like 50 groups, and you still get all the features that we looked at earlier. It's all completely free. So I'd recommend doing that. There are some other sort of versions there that you can pay for. And you'll see the list of things you get for free, right? That left-hand column, automatic translation, live video streaming, free storage per person. So all of that, you can sort of go and do an experiment with that, right? And I would strongly recommend, you can then have those conversations internally about what are we going to do next, but you can involve everyone in those conversations. Just very quickly, and I won't whiz through these, but these are the 5 pillars of success if you're going to try and roll out a platform like this and connect up all of your people. You've got to have your exec engaged, and there's got to be a narrative behind it, right? So it can't be just another thing. So you need to have a narrative there about, in order to survive, we need all of our people to have a voice and connected on this platform, and that needs to be coming from the top, from yourself if you're the CEO or whatever. Potentially some technical integration, whether that's just with your people directory, so you're creating that data and creating those accounts and it's secure. Ideally, talking with some early adopters, some champions, and talking to them about how we might set this up, what might be some groups, and getting them on board before you launch it to everyone else. Having a communication strategy, I'm sure Laura wouldn't disagree with that. Why are we doing this? Why do we need a place where we can all connect while everyone is working remotely? And then a bit of structure around the kind of groups. But that essentially there in 5 points is how you get this stuff working, whatever the size of your business. And then here, this is a bit of a more complicated diagram, but essentially what I'm trying to show you is that in a month, you can, if you're a 500-person business, you can have, there's a plan here. There's some tech stuff, there's some people stuff, there's some structure stuff, but you could get all this going using your internal resources and without the need to actually spend much or anything. And what you might find is you're getting the value out of your own existing resources very, very quickly, would be my response to that. And you can always give me a shout as well. Some contact details.
Well, I think that was an amazing, session. We packed in so much. We packed in technology, we packed in strategy, we packed in case studies, new ideas. I think this has been one of the strongest and the most amazing. Each of our sessions has been amazing, but I think this has been a really, really a good session and a lot of learning. And when the recording comes, I think it would be good for the SMEs to listen to this, because each minute of this conversation had something which they could use and they could implement, whether in terms of technology, strategy, or even just a matter of thought. And with that, I hand it over back to the World Trade Center to conclude.
Good evening, Karnvir, Nick, and Laura. I'm extremely sorry I could not join you before India to deliver the welcome address. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting session. I was just throughout. I just logged in at 5:05. That Karnvir was moderating, introducing the speaker. It was a very interesting program. Really, we enjoyed. Thank you very much for sparing your time. And I hope so all the participants really got the benefit out of it. Thank you very much. Vivek, thank you very much for organizing the program. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.